Good afternoon, and welcome to the fourth instalment in our Lunch and Learn series on new business models for regional publishing. I'm John Bergen, and I coordinate our training efforts with Google as part of the Google News Initiative training network across Australia and New Zealand. The Walkley Foundation has also partnered with the Google News Initiative to bring you the results of a 9-month-long independently researched study called Project Kookaburra. The research started in March this year and has just wrapped up. So every day this week, we've been discussing the findings and looking at new business models, all of them specific to news publishing in regional areas. Of course, they're relevant in metro areas too. Metro publishers often use the techniques and tools we're about to share with you. However, due to thin resources or poor internet or other factors, regional and small publishers have sometimes been left behind. And that's why the Walkleys is paying special attention to them. 5 independent news publishers from across Australia agreed to take part in new business model experiments. And this.
So just a quick recap. Project Kookaburra, our core approach was to look around the world, see what's working, particularly for smaller news publishers in terms of new ways to make money to support their journalism. And we wanted to see what we could find and bring them to Australia. But we're different in Australia. So we did want to pick 5 publishers who represent diversity, real diversity, so different geographic regions, different size markets, different publication frequencies, and work closely with them over 6 months to conduct a new business model pilot under real world conditions that was specifically customised for them. So saying that, all the 5 pilots, we're bringing you 1 a day, each day this week. This is New Business Model Week for regional publishing. They all had several things in common. First, the pilots were things that had worked elsewhere, but were new to the Australian publishers. Second, all of these pilots represented big trends that we were seeing globally. You know, they were tactical examples of big strategic trends, and they are, and I've spoken about them before, using digital assets like websites, microsites, newsletters to get more information on readers and monetize those readers better. And that's done in several ways, and we'll be addressing that. And then third, the publishers themselves all had the right mindset. And you'll see another great example of that today. And that mindset is resilience. Despite being in hard times, they were putting in and they were happy to put in extra effort, time and resources to try new things. We were incredibly lucky too that Nick Hopkins, who runs the Google News Initiative for Australia and New Zealand, was keen to get the answers as well. And this research wouldn't exist without him or the financial support that he provided for Simon and I to take the time that was needed to do this properly. So there are several aspects of this study that really are quite fascinating. I think what you're about to see today is one of the most popular experiments that's going on around the world. So the creation of digital newsletters, it seems to be quite a successful news strategy for legacy, print regional news businesses and also digital startups. And it's actually not as obvious an evolution of print publishing as, say, building a microsite, a cross-platform media kit, or leveraging a special event, which are all the modern equivalents of what publishers have done forever, really. But newsletters have caught on, and if they're done well, and you're about to see an example of them being done really well, readers really love them. So I just want to introduce my Kookaburra colleague now, who's going to take you through the pilot we did with the Fassifern Guardian and Tribune before we hand over to the publishers themselves and hear from the horse's mouth their experience of it. Hello, Simon.
Hi, Megan. How are you?
Great, thank you. Off you
Oh,
go.
shh. Sorry. My dog thought I was saying hello to somebody outside. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited to talk to you today about the Fassifern Guardian, as was when we first started this engagement, as became the Fassifern Guardian Tribune, which I'll touch on a little bit as well, because this paper has had a really amazing year where they've really leaned into the fragmentation and disruption that the coronavirus has placed on all of us, to look at this as an opportunity to really kind of expand, which is really incredible, and counter to some of the narratives that many publishers have faced this year. So it's a really interesting story. And as Megan said, we have been working with the Fassifern Guardian. They're on this beautiful part of the world, which I'm so eager to get to now that the Queensland border has reopened, on the scenic rim there, south of Brisbane. Really lovely, beautiful part of the world where they've been for more than a century, the Fassifern Guardian. And they have been on this moment of amazing transition, really over the last 12 months. They had their website went live for the first time in the back end of last year. And then, under their really dynamic editor, Drew, who you're going to hear from shortly, they have used, the technologies that are available to them, and taken advantage of some, some back and forward with Megan and I, and some work with us on their strategic plan to deploy newsletters to think about driving online subscriptions. They've got a fairly hard paywall there on the Fassifern Guardian, and so digitally, they're being very smart about thinking about how they're going to grow a paying audience for their really tremendous public interest journalism, and how they can use newsletters as a way of giving people an insight into the kind of high quality level of content that they produce, and to try and use that as a tool to grow online subscribers. So this is it, the beautiful part of the world that the Fassifern Guardian are in. And this is a business really focused on digitally acquiring subscribers in order to diversify their revenue mix going forward. So this is Drew. This is him last December when he launched their new website there at the Fassifern Guardian. And what we've done with Drew and his mother, Wendy, so this is a family business where Wendy has previously been the editor, is the proprietor. And, they have this trophy cabinet of amazing wins from the Clarions and other press awards in Queensland. They've got this really high bar of serving their communities really, really effectively, like all of our publishers, with really tremendous journalism. So we tapped into that, deep, rich internal expertise, Wendy's decades of experience as an editor and now as a proprietor, and Drew's experience, because Drew had been away from home, working in Brisbane, working for what was then Fairfax, on the Brisbane Times, and being part of that then Fairfax network. And really, he's absorbed a whole lot of insight into the kind of latest thinking around digital content strategy that's really, really helped. And if there was any advice for any of our thinking about transitioning, is get yourself a kind of Drew. Clone one, or find somebody who increasingly, it seems, people are keen for a kind of a sea change, and find somebody like Drew who really kind of gets the internet, because it will really help your business transition. With Drew and Wendy, we focused, Megan and I, on really thinking of their readers, of how they could really think about them as customers. And obviously, as you're developing digital strategy and subscription focus, you really need to, and some of the great publishers around the world are really thinking about customer relationship marketing and the different insights that digital allows you to get about your audience digitally that you didn't have in print. And that's really, as well, this product and this pilot shows about deepening your kind of sense of engagement with this audience. And then through that, and they've in 12 months done amazingly at diversifying their revenue opportunities, really thinking about the different ways beyond people paying for the newspaper or the advertising that's in that paper, which, as we know, unfortunately, as Megan has explained, the trend lines are double-digit decline year on year, have been going for about 10 years. That looks like the forecast is that continuing. So opening up new digital opportunities for revenue growth, which the Fassifern Guardian Tribune have done so well. The inspiration for this was, Drew and I both share a real love of how over the last couple of years, many publishers around the world, as they've recognized the importance of building really personal relationships with their audience, have really been deploying newsletters in a really exciting way. And for me, like the top of the tree, the kind of pinnacle here is Axios, which is a startup founded by Jim van der Heij and Mike Allen, who are ex-Politico reporters reporting DC. And they've created this, basically it's an email business. And so they have a range. This is just a snapshot here of the different emails that they have. And you can sign up to these emails. You get this, they've got a very specific, unique style they called smart brevity, which is really great place to learn if you're interested in how you can boil your content down to stuff that's really usable. And Axios do a brilliant job of this, as do Morning Brew, and a business-focused publication, which is just been acquired by Business Insider this year. So this sense of creating an email that's very kind of personal, that has the voice of the person sending it. So all these Axios products are written by deeply informed reporters, and you're getting that kind of expertise in your inbox each day or each week. So a really kind of personable email. The idea is that you kind of write as if you're hearing from a friend. And so the idea for this was that we would lean into Drew's kind of deep understanding of the scenic rim where he grew up, but also his sense of being able to kind of talk about, give the readers a sense of what is there if they subscribe to the Fassifern Guardian. So as Megan said, all of our pilots have been really inspired by the very best of kind of international exemplars of the different types of things that we've replicated here. And whatever you're trying to do, obviously these case studies are going to be useful. There's so much out there if you have a little Google around, or I'm always here and available if you want to email me or hit me up on Twitter as well for some insights. So what Drew explained is that the idea was we create this really kind of relevant product as they were thinking of expanding beyond, geographically, the scenic rim. The Fassifern Guardian and Buna have historically been on kind of like the western side of this quite big geographical area. They wanted to expand beyond that across the whole of the scenic rim. So we did quite a lot of work looking at the actual opportunity there to reach more people digitally. And actually think about as well, this year, the Ipswich Times, the oldest paper in Queensland, closed down. And that's where the Tribune came from. The Fassifern Guardian recognized a great opportunity to kind of expand their reach to people. They've had people coming to them from Brisbane and Ipswich, kind of making a sea change. This is obviously an opportunity for them to take their high quality brand the other way. So really thinking about how they can look at the world from that context of regional Queenslanders. And obviously this is the power of the internet, this ability to raise your kind of, increase your footprint, be expansionist, and seek to bring your quality to other communities who maybe have lost some news provision, as the Fassifern Guardian recognized. So, like with all our publishers this week, we've been working with the Smart Experiment Framework with the Fassifern G&T. I kind of wish I had a G&T. I've just got a water, but every time I hear their name now, I think there's a potential commercial tie-up with one of the gin brands that's getting up and running around the country. So the Smart framework here, as always with our publishers this week, was really about focusing on what we could learn from testing and learning. And in the time period available to us, there's 6 months that we worked with the paper, thinking about something very specific and measurable. So deploying data to really understand the success of what we try to do, achievable with the resources. And all our publishers this year, the Fassifern Guardian have been working with the pressures of JobKeeper and reduced hours for people in their newsrooms. So really, being mindful of realistic about what we could achieve, and then being timely, getting this thing up and running and trialing it in the period as well. So the specifics, the what, the who, the when, the why, were that we would build this personal connection between Drew and those email subscribers. So launch the product, encourage a kind of more conversational style than the classical sort of style of the paper, and introduce this kind of sense of a feedback loop. So speaking very directly, asking people what they liked about the content, asking people to respond, to share stuff, including that reader interaction within the loop, within the email, to create this kind of feedback loop. And the idea is to create this really this email that lands and people are like, great, it's Wednesday. I'm going to open up and see what the Fassifern Guardian Tribune are covering this week. And utilize that to kind of raise brand awareness. And this year there's been this great expansion for the brand, so raise awareness. They've hired a number of new reporters to cover these new areas, and they want to, and Drew's done this, really raise visibility for the product and use that to kind of be this kind of top of funnel where they can encourage more paying subscribers. And obviously that's the crucial second thing. So create a great product that's providing utility and use in people's lives, and then by that, drive online subscribers to the website and convert people into paying subscribers, because they can see there's a tease of the product, of the content within the email. They click there, they reach the paywall, they convert, and they become paid subscribers. And also then looking at, as we build this product into a more substantial offering, beyond the first few months we've been running, how this can open up a revenue stream. So as you'll see, the engagement rates they've got have been really tremendous, and this is a product that is clearly being used really positively by the people who are subscribed to it. This becomes, as we grow this audience, a really powerful new revenue opportunity as well. These are people who are really deeply invested in the place that they live, and a great place for an advertiser to sponsor the newsletter, over a month or a longer period. So, lots of different ways there with the plan. So how will we measure the progress? What metrics will we set? What data? We did a lot of work here. We've deployed MailChimp to run the newsletter. We deployed a whole load of stuff, as you'll see on the site, to drive people to it. And we looked at, a couple of different metrics of kind of growth to judge the success of what we were doing over time. So, first and foremost, it was growing email subscriptions, monitoring open rates and engagement. You can see here, this is a snapshot from the dashboard at MailChimp, just how engaged readers are to this particular product. And then, bouncing it around, Drew and I spoke every week about how things were going, about different content strategies. And, we began to develop a plan for unlocking some in the letter newsletter when we hit this goal. So, it's that sense of, clear kind of metrics for judging our success. We looked at what was needed to get this up and running. So Drew and I worked on some specific training around, setting up and working within MailChimp. And we particularly worked with our partners at AAP Studio on looking at all the multiple ways that we could, drive people to subscribe to this product. So if you visit the Fassifern Guardian, there's this really smart little pop-up widget that comes up asking you to subscribe. They've put newsletter in the top nav. There's some house ads around the site as well. They obviously looked at other ways as well. And it's this sense of really looking at all the different ways that we could get people to subscribe in there as well. So you'll see some of the different things that we tried there, and developing this kind of content strategy as well. So, lots of different work there, lots of kind of mini experiments through this 6 months that we trialed. And, as I explained at the top, it's really about thinking, well, how does this particular investment of time, and this is a good use of time, I believe, but it's definitely, Drew has got a busy week at the start of the week where he puts the paper together. They've now got an even busier week because they're starting to publish on Saturdays now for the first time as well, but they have a Wednesday paper and a Saturday paper. This product drops on a Wednesday, so Tuesday afternoon, Drew puts the newsletter together and thinks about the promotion strategy there. And so really thinking about, like, how does this help him and the brand? And so we worked on thinking about, how does the focus on telling the story of the journalism and the content that this great team of journos are producing each week, raise awareness of the growing, the growing brand. Boona Newspapers is the company. Fassifern Guardian and Tribune now is this exciting evolution of the brand. What data can they get that can inform, their future growth, and build a deeper connection with readers as they grow beyond the sort of confines, not the confines, but where they've historically served for more than a century, which is Boona and kind of like the western side of the scenic rim, and how they can develop, as they've done really brilliantly already, some diversified revenue opportunities. The timeline, we obviously worked, as I've said previously this week, it's finite. There's a great advantage to that. You say, right, this is the thing we want to test for 3 months or 6 months. Let's get on there and do it. Let's see what we learn. You might learn that nobody's interested. I think it's extremely unlikely if you have a good content strategy. The people are hungry for news. They're hungry for information. They're hungry to understand where they live. So, create a strategy and action it and test lots and see what you can learn. So we worked up until the middle of July on developing the content and engagement strategy. We developed this really awesome Drew developed welcome series, which I'll talk about a little bit as well. Got the newsletter ready to go, and then once it was live over the subsequent months, worked on moving stuff around, playing and looking and thinking about subject lines and thinking about who it came from, the email in people's inbox, what different ways could we experiment, and also how can we promote it. So obviously we talked about some of the on-site ways that we could promote the newsletter, but also a whole load of different ways that we can promote it, including their really deeply engaged Facebook page. So that's a place where there's been a really good response each week to the newsletter as well, and thinking about delivering all these stuff within time. So how did this project go? Really successfully, I would say. They definitely thought really deeply about this is a product and what it could deliver. Again, like with all our experiments, we capped it because of the nature of Megan and I's case studies, but also they've begun work here that I think will continue to reap rich benefits going forward into 2021 and beyond. So as Drew describes it, a key part of how this was useful was about the way it allowed him to focus his digital workflow, and also about how he begun through having this kind of intimate, it's really intimate in email. It's you've made that decision to get it. If you don't like it, you can unsubscribe at any point. So people are letting you into their inbox, and so there's a real kind of two-way opportunity there. And Drew's found that people have really responded to this, and I think it's it's been really insightful in terms of how the content that they're producing is received. It builds this personal connection. So as we described, this is about really deploying Drew himself to use his expertise to provide a kind of smart, succinct summary of the week's best content. And like we've talked about, it's kind of expanding the footprint of the brand beyond beyond Buna. So the product, the email is called the Southeast Journal, this kind of umbrella of different brands that the paper have developed. And you can see it's like a two-way street. He wants people to share and contact him. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, you'll see brilliantly every week that there's multiple ways where Drew's kind of calling out or surfacing kind of reader-generated content. It's infused with Drew's personality. As if he did not have enough on his plate this year, Drew was also engaged to be married, and because of a brief window they had where there was allowed a bit of movement between New South Wales and Queensland at one point, the wedding was brought forward. So they not only trialed this experiment with us, but also expanded their newspaper. Drew also got married as well. So a man who can juggle multiple balls at the same time. And congratulations to him and his wife. And using his personality as a young kind of charismatic editor to pass the baton on to kind of the next generation, and really have this personal point of contact. And I think I love Mike Allen's morning email I get every day, the founder of Axios. He's the one of the kind of co-founders of this business, still generates content himself every day, really kind of powerful connection you can have. And it really builds kind of loyalty to the brand, and also gives you as the editor the opportunity to really kind of emphasize the work you're doing for your community. So this is another example just of the great kind of role that the Fassifern Guardian are playing in kind of connecting the communities, surfacing their concerns, telling their stories and reflecting them, and the really fundamental important role that a newspaper plays in a regional community. Marketing wise, I touched on some of the different things we trialed. A whole, really deployed everything we could think of in terms of different sign-up boxes, house ads, navigation changes, all those different things, just to kind of encourage people to sign up. And we also set up this welcome series. So this is a thing that most publishers don't actually do, but it really is a brilliant way when somebody subscribes, somebody's taken the time to decide that they want to begin this deeper relationship with you, and they've given you this access to their inbox. A great thing you can do is actually thank them for that and ask them what they want to know, and just encourage this conversation, get this feedback loop going. And that can really build trust in your brand and support and help you. You can see here at the bottom, support our journalism, subscribe here. People can see the value of what you're doing. And if you keep on asking them nicely, you can convert some of those people to paid subscribers. So this welcome series was, a really a great and successful, initiative where Drew built trust, guided people through each week. After subscribing, he'd tell you a little bit more about the paper, about the region, about some of the great work that the Fassifern Guardian Tribune has done historically from a journalism perspective, about their belief, which is really, really true, about the importance of public interest journalism and asking people to fund it. And an insight that we found from a report was that 70% of publishers don't do this, and they're missing a huge opportunity in the beginning to really promote the brand and build loyalty. So I would definitely encourage you, if you're thinking of launching, or even if you've got a newsletter running already, anybody new to it should get a welcome series to really build this kind of loyalty right in the beginning. And we saw that these emails generate tremendous engagement. So this is an industry standard that they typically generate much more clicks and open rates than regular marketing campaigns. Our example, and this is a grab from the dashboard at MailChimp, shows just really high, strong engagement rate. This is way, way above kind of industry standard for news and publishing products. So people, are opening this, engaging with it, reading that. So it's really, really worth you investing some time in that. So to summarize, the last couple of key results are that we launched the newsletter initially to some digital subscribers who we had a cohort of people already subscribing to the masthead. So we sent the product to them and then obviously signed up lots of new people. Over the next 3 months, we saw triple-digit growth in the number of people we were sending the email to, really outstanding. This 109% growth in newsletter subscribers over the 3 months, which is a really tremendous achievement. And the engagement and click-through rates, they're well above the industry standard. So I think this shows that this newsletter was not only useful as a standalone product, but it also, people opened it, engaged with it every week, but also lots of people click through to the paper's website. And then that's where, each week as they click through, if they're not already subscribing and paying, there's a great opportunity to, to have them become paying subscribers. So average open rate was 49%. Over the 3 months since we launched the newsletter, well double the industry average. So a really tremendous achievement there, and testament to Drew's hard work on this product. And click-through rate, again, this was actually triple the industry average for news and publishing products. So really strong engagement, people clicking through to the site every week. So it's really useful as a product. People are opening it, engaging with it, but lots of people are actually also clicking through and reading more as well. So I think this shows, in a very short period of time, how a newsletter can really offer you a simple route to growing an engaged audience. They did this. The content is really strong. It's growing the subscriber numbers every week, and it's just a virtuous circle of growth and engagement. And like I showed on that welcome series, well above an industry average. For most publishers don't do this. The ones that do, the welcome series, isn't normally done as well as Drew has managed to do it. So really high, strong average across the 4 emails, a really high open rate there as well. And I haven't even covered this, but when they launched in Ipswich, this year, the paper also took out billboard advertising, outdoor media there, and they've had incredible, growth of their print product as well this year. So this combination of cross-platform, being ambitious and open to opportunities is really, really amazing. And it's the, data has really kind of powered this, really thinking about, where is there an opportunity? How can we capture this? How can we track it through data? So each day this week, I've been sharing a key part of what we've done with each of our publishers, and this is all in the Kookaburra Essentials pack that you can find on the Walkley's website. But a key thing which the Fassifern Guardian have done brilliantly is make decisions based on data. So really kind of focus in on the metrics that really matter to you as a business. One key metric of the priority. Look at what content works and what doesn't, and you can see that if you're doing a newsletter every week, you can see how a particular change in terms of how you flow the content or how you mix things up might suddenly create a spike or a drop off. Learn from what works and doesn't, and interrogate that data. Use that data to help back up your understanding of your community and the kind of content that resonates with it. Test and learn. And I think if you deploy data and think about it as a really valuable tool to the expertise you have within your newsrooms, it really will, transform your business in a really powerful and positive way. So that's it from me. I'm going to hand you back now to Megan, who's going to talk about how you can apply this case study yourself and also introduce our publishers.
Simon, you are, I'm sure, dying to hear from Wendy and Drew to get right down into the project that they've run so successfully and just their business. They're award winners and clearly have a business sense as well as a journalistic sort of mission that keep the quality high. But I just want to remind you, if you are a publisher and you don't have a newsletter, you can go to the Walkley's site and read the case study specifically about the Fassifern Guardian and Tribune's pilot, the Kookaburra pilot, and also the Essentials Pack that Simon's just mentioned, and that will be of assistance. So now, if Marcus, you wouldn't mind introducing or bringing on Wendy Creighton and Drew Creighton. Wendy's proprietor of the Fassifern Guardian and Tribune, and Drew is the editor. Her son, John Bergen's going to ask them some questions. Then you'll have a chance to ask them yourself. Over to you, John.
So much for that. And yes, Wendy Creighton is the editor-in-chief and Drew is the editor. These people are the heroes of the hour, and I'm very keen to ask you some questions, as I'm sure a lot of people are in the chat. First to you, Wendy. The FG&T, it's served Queensland's scenic rim since, I believe it was 1901, which is a phenomenal effort. It's not just survived, but has recently expanded. What do you put its longevity down to?
As the former editor, and the newspaper has always been embedded in the community. It has practiced what is now called public interest journalism long before there was a name for it. It was just considered responsible journalism. But admittedly, the last decade has been, we have survived by sheer dogged determination and not a lot else. We had the opportunity to get some federal government funding through their innovations program to establish a website. And from that point, it has made a huge difference, not in the fact that we just had a website, but in the fact that we were able to, learning that technology was a fairly steep curve, but being able to bring in Drew and for him to take over the editor role at a time when he was well above the curve, and combining the print edition with the website, and then News Corp's exit from many of their print editions in the region gave us an opportunity that Drew led us forward from. It's probably the best way of saying it.
So a lot of intersection of sort of competing values there, but you mentioned dogged determination, being good in a scrap, really fighting for it, but also innovation. And I suppose that's, Drew, where we can bring you in. This Southeast Journal, your email newsletter, Simon mentioned it has got triple-digit growth. That's phenomenal. 109% growth, I believe it was, in less than 6 months. Now, aside from just wanting to grow, what did you want to achieve when you set out to plan the newsletter and to put it into place?
Yeah, well, my big thing was always engagement. That was my job at Fairfax when I was there. And people, Simon shared this great report with me that people who are subscribers to newsletters are more likely to be subscribers to media organisations in general. So we thought it was a worthwhile thing to pursue with them. And yeah, what we've found is that people, more so than when I was in the city, really love that connection with what's going on behind the scenes of news. You know, they'd ask more questions, follow-ups. They even help us a little bit with maybe what we should follow up with sometimes. You know, they've got some interesting questions that we, don't think of, and we put it to the people at power and bring it back to them. So it's a pretty cool little ecosystem.
Yeah, fantastic. Now, I love to peek behind the curtain and roll up their sleeves and make a few suggestions as well. And Wendy, you've won journalism awards, obviously for great stories. This is the main game, isn't it? The stories. And you've tackled thorny issues like failures in bushfire management, building trust that you've got your communities back. How important is this in sustaining regional news businesses?
It is the peak thing to be able to reflect your community within your news stories, and to also have the opportunity to offer solutions to problems through your editorials. I was taught that the newspaper is the ultimate. The people involved are the ones who give the newspaper character, but it's always the newspaper. And this newspaper has always been a community leader. And just in reference to a question that's just popped up, it does answer it. We've been made stronger because we've always had a lot of competition. And one way to stave off the competition was to be good at journalism, be purposely parochial, to borrow a phrase, but to also add diversity to our news content by finding a local hook to bring in that diversity. Yeah.
And you've been laser focused on the community, like you said, and rightly so, but also the FG&T has expanded, hasn't it? So that focus has had to sort of encompass a greater audience, because of course it's expanded into Ipswich, a sizable town of what, 300,000 people. How will you use the newsletter to attract and retain readers there? Perhaps that's a question for you, Drew.
Yeah, so obviously when we started, it was specifically tailored to the Scenic Rim region, but the same kind of core value was there, in the sense that it was news that it should be relevant to all regional Queenslanders. You know, we take the big state stories and we find, you know, local case studies and stuff like that, as well as a lot of our like lighter and nature, outdoorsy kind of stuff. You know, we had a story last week about an eyeless snake that just went nuts, and more so in the Ipswich area, just because it was a connection to something that was nearby, and it was written in a way that it wasn't just for people in the Scenic Rim. It was basically for everyone.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And Wendy, you've got print and digital products now. So what tips would you have for other publishers perhaps getting started with both or juggling both platforms?
Never neglect your print product, but get someone who really understands not just how to use a website, but how to best use it to underpin the values of your print edition. So as Simon said, get a Drew, someone who understands that a website isn't somewhere where you just dump the news in. It needs to be energetic, as well as very much on point and timely. Fair enough.
To that point, you know, if only we all could get a Drew. How would you sum up what a Drew is? How do you build a Drew, so to speak? Like, what's the ingredients and what's the method?
Well, understanding the technology way beyond just being able to, you know, read the theory and apply it. It's all so much more than that. And really, Drew's probably the best at answering the things that he's achieved with our website.
Well, I mean, I guess the thing is a lot of us regional publishers, we're out in these regions because they're beautiful places to live. And, you know, COVID's been great for us attracting talent out here. We've got a ex-Melbourne Age journal working for us now because he wanted a tree change. Those people are out there, and I think the way to sell it to them is, you know, don't glamorize it. It's not glamorous, but the news is no less important out here. Mm-hmm. And you can still write about the big issues and get to big audiences. You just have to try a little harder. You know, what the Premier says in Brisbane will get to a lot of people anyway, because everyone's interested in what they're saying. What the local mayor out here says is not so interesting, but if you can write it in a way that you can really show how it affects people around here, it's just as important.
And Andrew, how do you determine the right, I guess, the right mix or content mix and the right kind of like emotion or tone of voice for your newsletter? Because you said engagement was so important. Now, without giving away any trade secrets, can you maybe kind of hint at what the secret sauce is?
I wouldn't say we have a secret sauce. It's applying the same values that I apply to laying out a newspaper. You know, you don't want death and destruction for the first 10 pages of the newspaper. People will just be sad. So it's the same mixing of light and dark. And then it's when you write it, a lot of the time, some of my journalists, they write really colloquially and it's really fun to read, so I don't change their work. But when it is a little bit drier, it's all about, you know, how you'd say it to someone at a pub, you know, how you'd launch into the story sitting next to someone instead of just, you know, the inverted pyramid kind of way of writing.
Yeah. Now this might be a bit of a tough one. I'm sure you're going to say all the stories, all the yarns, but do you find that your community is particularly interested in learning about one sort of theme or topic? Like what's sort of at the tip of everyone's tongue? What do they really want to know about and look to expect from your publication?
I guess agriculture is a big part of us, and agricultural innovation as well. So we do look around to what people are doing, you know, whether they're growing grass vertically for cattle feed or growing flies to make some industry. That's a real core of our coverage. But I mean, our local government coverage, we do in such a way that doesn't bore you to death. It's we really take pride in being the one publication that sits through those deathly boring meetings and brings a story that you find enjoyable to read.
Or understandable.
Understandable too. It's digestible. It's not, you know, the press release verbatim. We actually dive in, pick out what you need to know and really cover it well. And we stick to an issue. That's another thing is we will stick to an issue until it's well and truly done.
And I also think in that digital print mix, when in the digital sector, everything is based on, you know, it must be content driven. It must, you know, respond to this survey or that survey. I think we publish the news. We publish all the news. It's just how we publish it in terms of how it's presented, not in any way changing it, but making it readable, making it understandable, and plus all that Drew has said. But you don't avoid the news. We publish the news.
Yeah, great stuff, and good on you for covering the LGA's very important service here in Australia. We've got about 15 minutes left, so it's high time for me to bring in Megan and Simon. So perhaps if our man behind the screen can make that happen, we'll take to the chat box and see if we can answer some of these questions. Hello, Megan. Hello, Simon. So look, they've been coming in thick and fast, so where to start? But there was one particular one just up the top about, well, we'll get to Neil's question first, but perhaps or second, I should say, but first of all, the technology. Now, Sandra asks, what sort of costs are involved with setting up something like this? And I don't imagine tools like MailChimp or AAP Studio and CRMs come cheap. Are there affordable alternatives? Simon, you might want to tackle that first and then perhaps... I mean, MailChimp is pretty cheap. MailChimp is, you know, under $15 a month, $13 I think a month. And so it scales up. If you're sending thousands and thousands and thousands of emails, it scales up. But you can access it very, very cheaply in order to start and it's a very powerful product, which you can do all sorts of things. So if you're thinking a newsletter-driven business, you can basically run your business on MailChimp for a very small amount of cost. Certainly like a CMS as powerful as AAP's is not an insignificant cost. And that's a thing which a publisher, you know, you would need to have some fairly significant revenue to deploy that. But yes, there are solutions available that allow you to power your websites. There's, you know, you can do a whole load of different things with WordPress, for instance, and there's a thing called NewsPack, which is a customized
version of WordPress that's available under Creative Commons, open source, you can have for free if you want to. And that's a pretty powerful tool, deploying some of the things that WordPress has done specifically to news publishing. So I think, you know, there are really, really good opportunities. I would recommend a great email by a guy called Jeremy Kaplan, who is he's the lead on the entrepreneurial journalism course at CUNY in New York. And he writes a weekly email called Wonder Tools. And each week he reviews a whole bunch of different things that allow you to do journalism, and including stuff like, you know, content management systems and email subscription software. So I'd really give that a go, and, you know, look around. And like I said before, ask me directly. I'm happy to point you in the right direction.
And Simon, while I've got you, Neil asks, did this topic of a paid model for the newsletter content come up? Was that ever anything that was actively considered or debated?
Well, I think we discussed it a little bit, but my belief is that the way you think about a newsletter is as your kind of top of funnel. You want to give this, and this is in the nature of the product, it's not giving away all this brilliant journalism that the paper do, it's raising awareness of it. And the idea for that is that you give this away for free in order to convert people across. So, you know, there's a big potential audience. If they get this product in their inbox every day, as we've seen in my presentation, there's great opportunities every week to get them across there, reaching the paywall, recognizing this is something they want. And then over time, if that happens 2 or 3 times, they're going to get frustrated and they're going to want to read that. They're going to see the value of it, and then they're going to convert. So I think the email is your kind of free product that raises awareness of the great content you do. And as you grow that, it gives you this great opportunity to then convert people to become paying subscribers, as the Fassifern Guardian and Tribune have done so well.
And in the same space, Lauren Duffy's got a rather related question, and this is perhaps to Drew and to Wendy first. Lauren says, we're a free newspaper without a paywall on our website. How do free newspapers best use newsletters to increase income? Simon, Megan, perhaps this is for you as well. Does anyone have some thoughts in that space?
Yeah, for me, the newsletter is another version of the homepage. It's another way it's a vessel to carry your stories to people. So it's just about being user friendly to people. You know, if they prefer to consume their news in a newsletter, we'll bring it to them in that form, as opposed to the homepage or through social media. It's just another way for them to consume what you've worked so hard on throughout that week.
And Perry, while you're there, Drew. Perry,
sorry, John, can I
on.
just jump in there? It's actually 3 potential business models for newsletters, and for free papers, one of those models, Simon mentioned it briefly, when you get your newsletter to a specific scale, you can actually create ad inventory within the newsletter itself, which is premium inventory because you've got additional data. So what Simon and Drew are describing as the key goal being conversion to paid subscribers is absolutely right, but a secondary revenue stream which would be available for publishers of free papers would be to get enough scale to create ad inventory.
Okay. I was just about to ask, sorry about that, Megan. Drew and Wendy, does the FG&T have any local competitors, Perry asks. So if not, how has that affected your strategy or success, and how you might sort of think about tweaking this sort of strategy? And perhaps related to that, I'll fold another question that Perry has as well, is do you feel pressured to bring content in and out from behind your paywall if a competitor is running it for free? Do you keep an eye on what the next person's doing and sort of react to them, or maybe sort of take a lead on what they're doing?
I guess I'll start with what competitors we have here. Traditionally, we've always had a competitor to the east. They're roughly the same size as us. They always had more journalists than us. But, you know, we stuck to our coverage and our guns in terms of, you know, just getting to the bottom of issues. But then there's probably, I would say, almost half a dozen little free, what do you call that size? Quarterfolds out there. And, you know, I see the news ecosystem as like available to both. You know, they're competing on different kind of levels. You know, frees are a real kind of community tool. They encourage community cohesion and that kind of feel. Whereas ours is a different. We're bringing a tool to the people, which is the local news that you need to know to be a good citizen, I guess. So yeah, we've had plenty of publications, like the Queensland Times to the north of us, over the years, attempt to bring out monthlies. But yeah, we just...
And weekly frees.
And we just stuck to what we always did. We didn't get scared or, try and change things up. We just stuck to what people liked. And so on the second question, which was pressure to bring, I always feel pressure to bring content out from behind the paywall, not just because a competitor has it, but just because I think it's a damn good story and I want it out there to as many people as possible. With the competitors, I generally don't bring it out. One, we have a cheaper paywall, and two, I think it's a little bit underhanded. I don't like, getting into that tit for tat. Well, I'll bring mine out, you brought yours out. That's just not something I want to get involved in. But yeah, the feeling of wanting to run something for free happens a lot, and it's been something that I've been thinking about constantly. Is have we got the best paywall model running at the moment? And that's not an answer I've come to yet.
And
Can I jump in? Sorry, go on, Wendy.
I was just going to say, if in emergencies, say we had 74 days of bushfires here last year, all of that news is you get past the paywall too. There's not a problem
breaking news. Things that people's lives could be in danger. We definitely don't put behind a paywall, just because that's a community service we see more than an income revenue stream.
And in the end, with regards to competitors, the ultimate isn't for the community to like your newspaper. The ultimate is for it to trust your newspaper, and that trust underpins everything.
Absolutely.
And that's what we noticed when we first were researching you, looking at your site, that you had, I think, Drew, you described it as a leaky paywall, but you'd curated what was in front of the paywall to meet your values and principles, which Wendy has so articulately described, being trust, created in the community. So at the time, apart from the bushfire content, which was available for free, then all your COVID content was in front of the paywall too. And so it underpinned the service that you were providing for your community. And so I think those guiding principles do help, don't they, in deciding what's behind and what's in front?
It creates a lot of goodwill too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've got a little bit of a semi-technical question here from Bob Burton, so I'll just sort of throw this out to the panel and see who might latch onto the debate. It's two questions, and it's really about dreaded spam filters, and what do you do when your email, you lovingly craft this email, you send it out, but it only reaches X amount of people rather than Y because it's getting stuck behind those spam filters. What advice do you have for people trying to get their message out as much as possible to as many eyeballs? And the second part is for people that unsubscribe, which is obviously unfortunate, how much data are you getting about that? Like, what questions should you ask? What should you be doing with that information? And how can you fold it back into your newsletter offering? So if anyone wants to grab that question, please be my guest.
So there's definitely ways, depending, you can look, and MailChimp provides some support with making sure that the email, the formatting of the email, the from the email is set up to make sure that it comes through those, the Gmail in particular and Yahoo Mail and those places have strong things to protect spam. And so making sure that when you construct the email, it's set up, you can do that. You can also, if you want to, I think we did discuss this with the Welcome series, you can ask people to add the particular email address to a saved email address or a trusted email address, depending on which platform. So there's a number of different ways you can do that. And certainly, Bob, if you're having issues with that, I think it'd be good to look at what's going wrong maybe, and then actually maybe making some formatting changes depending on which email provider you're looking at. So again, I'm happy if you want to contact me directly to have a look at that for you. In terms of unsubscribe, We haven't had too many unsubscribes, Drew. We don't have anything specific in terms of exit data capture. Thankfully, we haven't really needed to, but
no, I don't think we can count the amount of unsubscribes on two hands. But I think the welcome series really gets ahead of that. I get a lot of questions, like technical questions, straight up. You know, this isn't working for me. What's going on here? How does this work? All those ones. So I think the early frustration gets, you know, bypassed fairly quick because, you know, I mean, you've got to reply to them. There's a lot of emails come through, so you can't ignore them because it is a real two-way relationship. But yeah, I think that gets ahead of a lot of the problems pretty quick.
Look, last question, because I noticed that we're running out of time. And look, this touches upon something that I asked you, Drew, but Corinne's asking, like, with regards to sort of like engaging with these audiences and that kind of welcome message and taking them on that journey, how much feedback does the audience give and how much of it is actionable? And how do you sort of work with the audience to sort of refine that process, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, the first email in the welcome series, I get the most like kind of thank yous and really appreciate this and all that kind of stuff. But then once the second and third, I think because they've had a week or two to look at the weekly newsletter, they start to ask questions about, you know, this link isn't working and whatever. It gives you a chance to realize what you're stuffing up. So there's nothing really specifically popping to mind as that's changed my workflow process. It's just a lot of minor things. I mean, they do a lot of typo pointing out, which is always fun. But yeah, there's nothing specifically that's coming to mind that really has just changed that much.
But it was definitely, as when we were working out the messaging on those, we did quite a lot of back and forward, Drew and I, on that messaging in order to really, the idea is to make it inclusive, to make the audience feel that you're literally there. Like, and Drew's been putting his hand up to them with this welcome series and saying, you know, I'm here, you know, to kind of troubleshoot, to help you out. And it's that sense of, you know, historically in a paper, you know, you could write a letter, but there wasn't this kind of two-way conversation. So this is, I think, the key kind of thing is you're actually sort of just sending this signal, like, you care to us, audience. We're here to kind of, you know, serve you or respond to you. And it's just sort of changing that a little bit. So it's still building on all that rich tradition from, you know, a journalistic perspective in print, but just, you know, bring it up to speed to 2021 or 2020 even.
I noticed one last question that I simply must ask. I'm probably going to go over by a minute, so don't shoot me, I'm sorry. But I noticed here, there's Neil asks, is there something that you've learned from this foray into digital, this ongoing experiment, that you can then return and apply to print? And that'll be my final question, I promise. And that might be for you, Wendy, and Drew first, and anyone else.
Yeah, I think you can A/B test online so well, and you know, if you learn how to write headlines for online, and I've applied a lot of those online headlines into the paper. They're a bit more straight to the point. You don't play around with puns as much. People don't really get puns online. So that's changed a lot. And also we've applied the layout and design of our site to our paper as well. We've really made it nice and clean. There's a lot of white space. And I think increasingly as everything gets so noisy online, there's things flashing and popping up at you. The newspaper is like a place to kind of relax and chill out, not have something buzz at you all the time, not have something get in the road and you go, oh, I can get rid of that. It's just a nice, clean experience, and it doesn't strain your eyes. So,
yeah, here. Oh, listen, I could go on for ages and ages, but I won't. I'll let everybody go. You will have noticed that a couple of links have been posted in the chat panels where you can get hold of some of the packs. Thank you for everybody's questions. Apologies if I didn't get to all of it, but that is all the time we have for today. So I really do hope that you've enjoyed the exploration of this new business model and how to deploy newsletters to drive online subscriptions. And you can find the resources about Project Kookaburra on our website. That is, of course, www.walkleys.com. We'll be back tomorrow with the final installment in our Lunch and Learn series. Until then, goodbye, and thank you so much, Drew, and thank you so much, Wendy and Megan and Simon and Marcus behind the scenes, our dutiful panelist, for bringing everything together today. Thank you and goodbye.